Listen to the lecture.
Well, I think most of us enjoy a chocolate bar or cookies between meals. Unfortunately, our taste for sugary sweets can prevent us from having good health. Let me tell you a couple of ways to deal with the sugar problems. First, we need to take care of our teeth. Brush your teeth after every meal or snack. Brushing scrubs away the sugar that allows acid to attack our teeth. You should also get your teeth checked by a dentist at least twice a year. Moreover, we have to reduce the amount of sugar we eat in order to stay slim and healthy. Try snacking on naturally sweet fruits or nuts instead of cookies, which are high in calories from sugar.
Listen to the lecture. More and more animals are near extinction because of human activities. But if we take action in time, we can save many of these endangered animals. First of all, we can save the animals by banning or limiting hunting. Many countries currently use a system of hunting licenses. This controls the kinds and numbers of animals that can be hunted each year. We can protect endangered animals through this system. Another solution is habitat protection. By making national parks, some governments try to protect the areas that animals need to live. Remaining wild animals can escape human pressures there. Unless we save their natural habitat, the endangered animals will have no future. Listen to the lecture.
Well, I guess many of you don't seem to get enough sleep. I often see some of you dozing in my class. According to recent studies, lack of sleep can trigger some serious problems. Then, what should we do? Here is some advice to get the sleep we need. First, we should do things that can relax us and avoid caffeine before bedtime. Listening to soft music or drinking a cup of herb tea may work for us. Second, you should get rid of electronic items from the bedroom. If we minimize light and noise in the bedroom, we can fall asleep more easily. But we are likely to get less sleep if we have electronic items like a computer or cell phone in our bedroom.
Listen to the lecture. You probably already know that desertification may soon affect millions of people, but you may not be aware of what we can do to control it. Today, I will talk about 2 ways we can stop desertification. One thing we can do is to use nature itself. In Africa's Sahara region, towns are building walls of trees and leaves. It is to protect themselves against advancing sand dunes. These green walls also keep the environment cleaner by absorbing dust from sandstorms. In addition, we can make laws to control desertification. For example, the Chinese made a law in 2001 that protects certain land areas from any farming or tree cutting. This law, it is hoped, will create a greener future. Listen to the lecture.
For today's class, I'm going to discuss some ways to prevent the problems caused by antibiotics. The ultimate goal is to have antibiotics in our body only when it is necessary. To start with, we can avoid getting antibiotics from food by consuming organic meat or vegetables. We can check the labels on the package when we shop for food or grow some vegetables like lettuce at home. Besides that, we can also avoid medical overuse of antibiotics by getting more specific tests when we get sick. In case of a sore throat, a simple test can tell us whether it's just a virus. If it is a viral infection, then no antibiotics are needed. Most importantly, we have to educate people about how much harm antibiotics can cause us when they are misused. Patients should be advised that antibiotics will cause dangerous medical problems if they are not taken according to doctors' exact directions.
Listen to the lecture. Today we are going to continue our discussion of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. We know about its symptoms, but what about its treatment? One part of most ADHD treatment programs is prescription medication. The drug Ritalin, for example, raises the brain's dopamine levels and, as a result, can make children more focused in handling the demands of school. According to studies, about 70% of children with ADHD do better in school after being given Ritalin. Teachers can also help children with ADHD who still display symptoms of being constantly active and restless. These children can be allowed to work off their excess energy by becoming a teacher's assistant, running small errands, or passing out papers to the class. Finally, impulsive behavior symptoms of ADHD can be treated effectively with behavior therapy. Behavior therapy is simply a system of rewarding quiet, productive behavior and punishing reckless actions. As an example, a child who behaves well can be complimented with reward stickers.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Now, I'd like to continue talking about how society underutilizes its elderly population. As people live longer and longer, it seems like such a waste for people in their 50s simply to retire and do nothing but play golf or go fishing. So let me give you a couple of suggestions. Of course, many elderly people don't want full-time jobs. However, a large number would be willing to work part-time. This way of working would accomplish a couple of things. First, they wouldn't have to come in every day. This would keep the elderly from getting too worn out to do their jobs. Remember that the elderly have less energy. Also, letting them work part-time would keep their minds fresh, which means that they wouldn't become bored with their work. Here's another idea. I know all of you young people think that you know everything, but your experiences are nothing compared to those of a 50 or 60-year-old person. Companies need to do their best to utilize the skills that their older employees have. For example, they could give them a wider range of duties instead of making them repeat the same tasks over and over. And the companies could consult with their elderly employees more often. This effort would not only make them feel wanted, but would also draw upon their many years of experience working at the company.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Yes, the zebra mussel is one of the worst invasive species to hit America. Scientists estimate it has cost billions of dollars in damages. While it's causing problems, there are a couple of methods that could help mitigate the damage it's causing. Let me explain. 1. Everyone knows zebra mussels moved from Russia to America by traveling on boats. Well, there must be better decontamination procedures implemented to kill any mussels found hitchhiking on boats. Before a boat enters a lake or river system, the ship's ballast should be sterilized with seawater, which kills the mussels. And the entire ship needs to be checked. Zebra mussels can survive out of water for several days, so the anchor chains and other parts out of water need to be decontaminated as well. 2. There are some species of birds and fish that eat zebra mussels. For example, some ducks feed on them. Likewise, croakers, carp, and sturgeon are also their natural predators. These species should be introduced to the waterways. Unfortunately, there are not enough of these birds and fish to make an impact on the mussels' numbers. Researchers must discover a way quickly to increase the numbers of these species in the hope that they will start to make a dent in the number of mussels. This effort will help control their expansion.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
I'm sure many of you just got your tuition bills, and I know that most of you weren't pleased. Tuition went up by 5% this year for the 5th year in a row. Running a college is getting to be too expensive, but there are a few ways to offset this without raising your fees. Everyone wants to improve our school's quality, but, money isn't totally necessary to do this. For example, we should be looking at ourselves to improve our school. Take professors, for example. We could augment the quality of our lectures as well as develop better curriculums, and you, the students, could perform better both at school and after graduation. That would help increase our school's ranking without us spending much money or raising tuition. Here's another idea, especially for engineering or science-heavy schools like ours. We should seek close ties with corporations. Why should we do this? Well, both of us will benefit. First, we'll get free state-of-the-art facilities, which both students and faculty will be able to use. And second, the corporation will get the inside track on recruiting our students to work for them once they graduate. And the corporations will know the students got an excellent education because they help contribute to it. It's a win-win situation for both parties.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Everyone knows that raising children in America nowadays is expensive. Indeed, that's one reason why many couples are choosing to have only one child or none at all. However, I don't want to discourage any of you from having children of your own. There are some ways to get those expenses down. For example, many families, even those with health insurance, spend huge amounts of money on medical expenses for their children. That's understandable, but instead of treating illnesses when they occur, they ought to be practicing prevention, which, in the long run, will save them money. One way to do this is to practice extreme cleanliness. A clean child is a healthy child. Clean children become sick less often and have fewer allergies. That's money in the bank right there. Another cost-reducing measure is also related to health. We often hear about kids that get burned in the kitchen or hurt themselves in other ways. Remember, even with health insurance, one trip to the hospital can cost tens of thousands of dollars. So parents should be educating their children on safety. Knowing about safety increases the chances that the child won't get hurt and will remain out of harm. Finally, parents should be encouraging their children to pursue their own intellectual interests. Too many times, parents waste money on tutoring or lessons that their children aren't interested in. Why pay for piano lessons if your kid hates the piano? He's not going to become the next Mozart if he hates it. And parents shouldn't spend so much money on educational software if it's for something that their child has no interest in. Of course, these suggestions might only reduce a few $1,000s off the total price tag, but at today's rates, every dollar counts.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Solving the problem of nicotine addiction is something millions of smokers around the world struggle with on a continuous basis. Few people are able to quit smoking without a struggle, and many have to make several attempts before they are successful, if they ever are. However, there are a number of treatment options that can help smokers quit the habit. The first is called nicotine replacement therapy, or NRT. Nicotine replacement therapy, or NRT, provides low doses of nicotine to help smokers cope with their nicotine addiction. NRT comes in the form of gums, patches, oral sprays, inhalers, and lozenges. The level of nicotine these products release is based on the level of the smoker's addiction, for example, light, average, or heavy smoker. As time goes on, the smoker can reduce the amount of nicotine he or she gets from NRT, thus eventually eliminating their addiction. NRT also helps lessen the effects of nicotine withdrawal because rather than experiencing a sudden removal of nicotine from their system, smokers who use NRT have the drug removed gradually. Beating the physical addiction of smoking, however, is only half the battle. Smokers who wish to quit must beat the psychological addiction as well, and this can be very difficult. Some smokers choose to also attend nicotine anonymous groups. These groups adopt the strategies used by Alcoholics Anonymous to deal with alcoholism. Smokers who attend these meetings, like alcoholics, admit their powerlessness over their dependence on nicotine and use a combination of sponsorship and regular attendance of meetings to address their temptation to light up a cigarette. Other smokers opt to hire a hypnotherapist. Hypnotherapy techniques can help a person block the psychological impulses that cause him or her to smoke. The smoker is first hypnotized and then given instructions on how to deal with the urge to smoke. Because these instructions are given while the patient is hypnotized, they are very powerful and usually quite effective.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
So, we've been talking about the recent elections and how Americans elect their presidents, indirectly. It may seem wrong that the winner of the popular vote can still lose the election, but it is, according to our Constitution, completely legitimate. Ultimately, it's the Electoral College that cast the final ballots. The system has come under fire in the past few years, and there are two interesting reforms that could make this system more, democratic in nature. The first would simply revise the electoral system, while the second devises a perfectly legal way to bypass it altogether. One complaint is that the candidate who receives the majority of the votes within a state wins all of that state's electoral votes. A proposed alternative is a proportional representation system. In this system, each state would still have its allocated number of electoral votes, but instead of all the state's electoral votes going to the party that wins the majority within the state, it would allow these votes to be split according to which candidate receives what percentage of the popular vote. This system would more accurately reflect the views of both parties within a given state. Another criticism is that it undermines the idea of rule by the people, in the sense that the national popular vote can sometimes have little bearing on the electoral vote. One proposed remedy is interstate compacts. An interstate compact allows for cooperation between states over broad policy issues. As far as elections are concerned, any number of states might agree with one another to devote all of their electoral votes to the candidate who wins the national popular vote. If enough states enter into the compact, they could essentially bypass the Electoral College altogether and allow the election to be decided by the national popular vote.